Welcome to Sports Extra. I'm your host Ali Gohar. Tonight we're going to talk about empowering women through sport, something that we don't discuss enough, and those who are trying to make a difference, well, they really don't get enough coverage or enough support. So we'll be speaking to two women today who are trying their best to try and get women involved in sports, and they're also trying their level best to shatter stereotypes. I have here with me Ms. Noorena Shams, who's a sports activist and an athlete herself. Noorena Shams, and we also have Ms. Ebba Qureshi, founder and CEO of Fem Games. Ladies, great to have you on.
It's amazing to be here. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you so much.
Right, we'll talk about all this in detail, but before we do that, our PTV World production team has prepared a package of female empowerment in sport. Let's listen in.
It is important to get girls outdoors and let them engage in physical activities. It is good for both physical and mental well-being. Sports has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sports can create hope where once there was only despair. Women in Pakistan believe there are cultural hurdles for girls to take up sports, such as families discourage them or a lack of government funding to establish sporting facilities. We have an opportunity to put these ideals into action for the realization of gender equality and women empowerment, both in sport itself and in the wider world through sports. Sports can be one of the great drivers of gender equality by teaching women and girls the value of teamwork, self-reliance and resilience. It can provide girls with social connections and a refuge from violence in their homes and communities, and help them to understand their bodies and build confidence and the ability to speak up, particularly during adolescence, when the pressure to conform to traditionally discriminatory social norms and a lack of representation remain some of the most pervasive barriers to gender equality around the world. Even when laws and policies are in place, deep-seated attitudes about gender roles can hold back substantive change. We need visible role models of women athletes excelling on the pitch, in the arena and on the Olympic podium so that girls see and believe in their capabilities.
Only if we could put that to practice. Ebba Qureshi, I'll begin with you. Before we talk about what you do and what Noorena does and what can be done to encourage girls in the sport, just a little bit about this, about the lockdown, coronavirus, how it's affecting everybody's life. Obviously, it's affected everybody's life in some way, but what about both of you? How is it affecting your work?
Well, I think, like you said, coronavirus, this pandemic has absolutely everyone in some way or the other. Some people have been affected by it quite badly. Some have been adjustable towards it, so it's worked for some. But I think generally it's been quite a big change. So everyone's trying to adjust to this new norm of wearing masks and social distancing, and also losing out on a lot of work. So your question, how has it affected my work in particular, especially with advocating for women in sports, because of the social distancing, because of schools not being open, because of girls not being able to go out as freely, or attend gyms, for example, or some of their sports if they were doing any extracurricular activities, and most importantly at school, not being able to attend a sports lesson. That's been one of the biggest, I think, drawbacks for us, I think, and trying to engage everyone to do some kind of activity.
Noorena, what about you? What's your take on all this, and how has it affected your day-to-day life?
I mean, from a very long time, I needed a break, and I would say that it is a blessing in disguise in a way that I'm back home after like months and years since I'm from there. But apart from that, I really feel that it's kind of a feeling that which no one really wants to have, especially if you're an athlete, because your work is too physical and you go out and you explore, and I mean your own abilities like cycling and then doing your training and everything. When it pauses, it gives you a lot of mental stress to you. So for me, I had that fair share of that in the start, where I used to feel that I have played squash decades ago, and I believe that most of my fellow friends were facing the same thing. So yeah, it kind of affected that way, but then fortunately I play squash, and squash is inside the room, so I had enough you can say walls to play on. So yeah, it hasn't affected that way.
Ebba Qureshi, founder of Fem Games. Tell us, what's Fem Games all about?
I think a lot of people might be familiar with it, but it's a youth-inspired sports curriculum, which we have tried to develop into very short and snappy sessions that can be very easily implemented in girls' schools in Pakistan. In fact, it can be in a co-ed school. Just in particular for girls, because we find that, from research that we did, that if we compare our figures to the global world, Pakistan does have some of the lowest figures in activity levels between 10 to 15-year-old girls. So we try to develop sessions that are very engaging, to be implemented in their PE lesson, so that they're very well-structured sessions. They are very engaging, like I said, and they're very sort of game-based skills. So, everything is quite fun, so that girls that don't like to get up and play are able to then join and want to join. We did start off with tips. That's what we've been doing in Karachi for the past year or so in different schools as taster sessions. We've had a response from it, and so we worked with ICC coaches. Obviously, our husband, who's been running the program, he's a really good curriculum.
Right, Noorena, back to you. Tell us, why were you drawn towards sport? What made you go in that direction, and did you have to face any hurdles?
I still don't remember that how exactly I got into sports and stuff, and most of the time people do ask me this question, but as far as I remember, I was a very energetic kid, and I used to be very physically active. So a place like Deer, I never had a role model or anything. I just knew that I just wanted to play. So my father got me a cycle, and I used to sneak out of my house. At that time 9 years old or 10 years old, and I used to sneak out of my house and I used to ride cycle around the city, which was for any girl in Deer is very hard. And then my father found out, and surprisingly my father was very supportive. So this was the time when I got into cycling and sports and everything, in particular cycling, because I really liked exploring the world, and I wanted to see how the world looks like outside of my house. And I would say I was blessed enough to have such kind of father or mother who, when they found out, they didn't say anything. Of course, I had many hurdles like any other athlete in the world, but particularly from this side of the world where it's still developing, for me, going out of the house was such a big struggle. I had to face the 2009 war against Taliban and everything. That did not affect me directly, but in a way it did affect me directly. My school was shut, which means that if I'm not going out for my school, how would I go out for my even training and stuff? But again, that lockdown, people are experiencing lockdown now, but I have experienced it, and my people have experienced it back in 2009. We used to be locked down inside our house. We used to play cricket on our roof. We used to play cricket in the ground with the soldiers. I used to play cricket with my brothers. And I mean, that's how I got into cricket. So there were a lot of problems for girls. And the way Ebba actually talked about how the curriculum of schools never supported girls' sport, it's true. For a girl like me from Deer, there was no specific kind of sport given to me in school. Whenever I used to have a bat, people used to laugh at me that, you're a girl, why are you playing? So exactly, I was kind of an alien for everyone in my school that, oh, she wants to play cricket. How can she do that?
Shocking, the kind of things we take for granted. And it's just interesting that you mentioned the lockdown, that you went through a lockdown way back when, or due to very, very different reasons. We'll get back to that in your experiences. But you talked about the school level and PE curriculum. Now, I don't have a very strong understanding of this, but from what I've read and heard, that there's a certain amount of physical activity that schools have to do, or have to make the children do a certain number of hours. But I think it's safe to assume that a number of Pakistani schools fall woefully short of that, and maybe we don't take it as seriously, maybe there's not enough funding, maybe the PE teachers aren't qualified, I don't know. But it's a matter that should be taken very, very seriously for both boys and for girls and boys, by the way, both. Because if you don't encourage kids to get into other activities, healthy activities like sports, it's very easy for them to fall into bad habits. I mean, now, it's so easy to just go around the corner and buy drugs, alcohol. It's become so easy. So in order to avoid that, to stop children from doing that, we've got to encourage them to play sports. That's one of the things that we ought to do.
Yeah. I mean, Ali, you know, sports is a great leveler. You know, it's one of those subjects that overcomes inequalities, etc. And that's if you treat it as an equal subject, and you provide the same facilities you do with boys to girls, basically, as well. Coming back to your question about how many hours a day in general we should be exercising or should be having some physical activity, as a girl between 10 and 15, they should really ideally be having a minimum of 2 hours exercise or some form of activity in a day. In Pakistan, generally in schools, generally I'm talking here, a week of it, which is just, is astonishing. So, which is why it's more important to advocate for girls where the levels of physical activity falls between the ages of 15, where they're developing into women, into perhaps leaders, they're going further into their education, where they're going to, need confidence levels, team building skills, etc. That's where sports comes and plays a part for them. And I feel that schools have possibly not been very strict, very pushing towards the subject. So you find it very easy that girls will just go and sit out of the lesson and say, "Hamara dil nahi karo, we're not wanting to play today. We don't feel up to it." Yeah. So it's very easy to do that. Can you sit out of a maths and a science lesson like that? You can't. So there is a mindset, Ali, we need to change. We need to push our girls, not just the families, the parents and the brothers, but also the schools, to say that there is a report coming at the end of this year on your fitness, on how much you participated in this lesson. It's actually going to have an effect in your further studies. So for example, if I come back to England or any other country, I've also studied in the Middle East, you're either supposed to pursue something in music or sports as in order to support your degree you go to university. So it's something like a personal, in your personal statement, you have really profile yourself as to if you are pursuing a particular sport, because what they believe is that that's going to give you those confidence levels, make you into that different individual, and make you into a great leader. These are the things that we're actually missing. We need to be pushing these advocacies,
Yeah, it's all about becoming a well-rounded human being. That's why extracurricular activities are absolutely crucial, but obviously we're quite far behind. We're not even at that stage yet where we can barely have the conversation. So Noorena, back to you. Ebba was talking about how the schools need to encourage both girls and boys, but mainly girls, because girls face more hurdles when it comes to getting into sport. It's the schools that have to play a very important role, because let's face it, the older generation, they have their ideas, certain stereotypes, and it's going to be hard to get rid of. So encouraging their daughters to play sport, it's not going to happen anytime soon, which is why you need the schools to get involved. And then, like, if a teacher says to them that, look, it's important for your girls to play sport, they need this much physical activity, then they'll be like, हाँ, अगर teacher ने कह दिया, फिर ठीक है. That's why it's very important that the schools get involved. I think we need to drive that home.
So, I mean, as agreeing to Abbas, how she actually explained how sports is necessary in school. So there is something that I want to add is endorphin is a molecule that is released by brain when you play any sport or do anything that gives you joy. So for example, I remember when I was doing my research, I got to know that one cigarette is equal to 1 hour of playing squash. because that is the joy that I'm getting here and here as well. And I believe that this should be the biggest encouragement for parents to get their kids involved in this thing, because they're going to be away from this thing. And since she actually mentioned how we had to take one thing as an extracurricular activity in school and stuff, for me it was different in a way that in our schools the PE teachers were never qualified. There were never teachers in a way that they were like coaches of high qualification, that, oh, such a big person or such a big player is my coach. Like, I mean, the way she mentioned that Azhar is basically doing everything, so that is kind of motivation. I never had that motivation. I remember in Peshawar, when I was in this one school, I used to be the only girl who used to bat. And then when I used to bat, there never used to be anyone to actually do bowling to me. So there used to be guys from 5th grade or 6th grade, or maybe someone younger, and I used to actually request them that, can we play sport? Can we play cricket and stuff like that? So I mean, these are the factors we call intellectual marketing, where we can encourage parents to get involved in sports, like, I mean, physical activities and physical education, how it impacts on a kid's abilities and personalities in school, like how they become leaders. Like me, I'm a student, I have a scholarship, and I study, and now I know the ethics of how I can balance between studies and my sport, and then I have the ability to bounce back. If I fail a test, I do not get disheartened saying that, oh my God, I scored so bad. Just because of my sport, I know that I'm going to bounce back. So these are the qualities that are lacking in our kids. And you're right that our parents would not actually get this thing because they never could relate to it. There was nothing in their generation, especially if I talk about my mother. She never experienced to play. But now when she sees me, that out of all her kids, I'm the one who is very confident, who knows how to take risks, who has seen the world, which is like pretty rare for any kid in there. I mean, so these are the things that encourage parents. And as far as the applications are concerned, let me tell you a fact. If you want to get into Ivy Leagues, the ACT test that is required. For athletes, you can score as low as 25 out of 36 if you want to get into Columbia, because if you're an athlete, you're representing them. You're given scholarship by NCAA. You're made sure that you actually get that kind of education and training at the same time. And there are so many examples in squash, especially, that they have graduated from Ivy Leagues and they're now the top athletes now. So education actually helps your sport, and sport actually helps education. That is missing in Pakistan.
Yeah.
You put that beautifully. I admire your passion and just the way you speak about it. It shows just how much this means to you. But Ebba, coming back to you, you made an important point there about the general thought process, our mindset. We may be in 2020, but the mindset is still antediluvian, completely primitive. I mean, women leaving the house is an issue. That's the main reason why girls can't get involved or play sport. Now, how do we defeat that? How do we overcome this mindset? I'm sure you've thought about it, because that's a much bigger battle. And for that, we've talked about schools, we've talked about parents trying to change, but the media, people like me, we have a very important role to play. We have a crucial role to play in changing the mindset, and we need to keep at it. So would you like to expound on that? These are my thoughts, but I'm sure you have some of your own.
So Ali, I think that we're not as behind as people think we are. We have moved on in the past 10 years. We've done really well. We've had great sports women come out of the country. We know about Noorena. We know about the legend now. Why we've known for female sports like Sana Mir, people like her. So it's it's a breath of fresh air to hear these names come out. We've got Bisma Maroof. You can go to an average young girl and ask her, do you know a female sports star in Pakistan? She will come up with a name. This was never there before. If I was asked, even if I was asked 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to name a So I think, obviously social media has really helped as well, but also people like Sana Mir and, the likes of Bisma Maruf. Obviously this is cricket. They're very lucky. They have an amazing board behind them. The PCB have really invested in the women's team now in the last few years, for example. I would urge other boards in Pakistan to also invest. Unfortunately, football for girls in Pakistan has been a little bit of a, they've been affected by political wars in there or something, but it's a bit sad not to see that we don't have a football team that has been running continuously and tournaments for us. But this is about professional athletes, Ali. What I want to come to is that our mindsets have evolved, have changed slightly in the last 10 years. Parents have started thinking about their girls playing a sport within school. I wouldn't say that I wanted to push for extracurricular, so after school things, because we have a culture and we have a mind which is very, we have a thought process which is it's been embedded in us for the last so many years. So to come out and then suddenly say, right, change your thought process, we're going to now get your girls to come after school or go outside of their comfort zone and start playing, that's not going to happen. What we really want to do is run a normalization campaign. The first thing you have to do is to try and slowly change the mindset and say, okay, ye kaam haya mein bhi ho sakta hai. We're not asking your girls to start changing their clothes and running outside, in public, etc. We are advocating for safe parks. We are asking for, advocating for safe environments for girls so that they feel comfortable and safe to play a sport in. There are several organizations that are doing amazing work. They're running tournaments, cricket tournaments, for example, in safe grounds, making sure that there's no other men in there whilst the girls are playing a tournament, apart from their immediate families. At school, what I'd like to advocate for is that the teachers the teachers that are actually employed are qualified, if we can do that. If you push for qualified PE teachers, there will be more teachers coming to take courses, for example, to then become qualified and run a proper PE lesson. So I think it's not just the onus. We can't just say that we're really backward and, we're really struggling. And no, we're not. We've got a really good educated society out there. Yes, perhaps in the underprivileged areas, we have a little bit of a hurdle there to come across. But if you talk to them and if you show them how happy their children are, because we've been in those areas with Fem Games, and they're overwhelmed, and their response has been overwhelming. They want us to come again. Their parents have come to us and said, she had so much fun playing this game, and when are you coming back? And the things that Noorena was saying, we call it happy hormones, right? So physical activity gives out happy hormones, which makes you happy, it makes you more confident, and things like that. So if we educate people on the good things on sport and PE and activity, that's how I'm sure people are going to come forward and let their girls play even more.
No, I'm glad you painted a very positive and accurate picture there. I think that's a brilliant way to look at it. And you're right, baby steps. And I'm sure things have improved in the last 10 years. I guess that's how society progresses. You can't expect, instant change overnight. So that made a lot of sense. Noorena, I was recently, last winter, I was in Naltar, and there was a skiing competition there organized by the Air Force. And I tell you what, I mean, there were some girls, there were a couple of girls skiing there, more than a couple actually, quite a few, but there were a couple who were really, really good. They even competed internationally. And I couldn't begin to believe the kind of natural ability and skill that they have. It's quite incredible, and they're locals. They're from that area, and just watching them go about their business, their sport. It was incredible, and it's great that the Pakistani Air Force was doing their bit in sponsoring and promoting these girls. But I was just thinking that, as Ebba said, things are improving. So I was just thinking in the next maybe 10 or 20 years, when maybe we have the funds, maybe the mindset would have changed more, the exposure, how good our female athletes can be, and maybe in 20 years they can really make a name for themselves at the international level. It was just so inspiring to see these naturally gifted athletes.
It's like the way Ebba mentioned that we're doing far better than before, and I agree with that. It's like Rome was not built in one night. I would just say this thing. So for me, the response that I have gotten from D especially, I was scared. I thought the same, that there is going to be some patriarchal kind of thought and stuff like that. For me, coming out as the first ever female athlete internationally from the Malaccan region, which consists of Swat, Dir, Chitral, and I mean all these places, Pune and stuff. So you wouldn't believe that I am in Dir. I go for my cycling, and I'm the only girl doing it. And there are so many people who actually admire me. And this one time, my mother was like, "Okay, fine, bahar jana hai to matlab try your best to hide your apne baal wagera chupa dena, kisi ko samajhna hai," and stuff like that. And I was like, I mean, everyone knows me. And I remember whoever watches my interview, they actually are so proud. And I never expected this. I thought that they're going to be so angry and stuff. How is time changing? I'm sitting with the sports minister of KP. I'm the only athlete, and I'm female, to actually work on development with the government. I'm in their advisory board, the committee which actually manage all these funds and stuff. What is more than a big change in that? That no other male player or no other coach is there but me. I'm the youngest one who's sitting there. So for me, I believe this is the change. And the way you mentioned that Air Force is doing so well. Air Force actually looks after squash as well, and they're doing pretty good. And the other point is that how we can count so many athletes. We have the girls especially. We can quote names like Nargis Hazara, Kulsum Hazara. We have Hajra Khan. We have cyclist Halima Gayoub. We have so many cricketers. In squash we have Faiza Zafar, Madina Zafar. I mean, I would say that I am there, but I would love to work on development side as well as an athlete to make it safe for others. But to be honest, if given a bit of more support, which already we have by the private sector, there can be such a big name of female athletes coming out of, Pakistan. So I believe there is a very bright future of Pakistan's female athletes.
Yeah.
The private sector, you mentioned it, Noorena. Ebba, how do we get them? How do we get them involved? We've had lots of shows, not just about female empowerment, but sports like hockey, squash, so many other sports. In order for them to improve, the private sector needs to get involved. Now, how do we go about doing that?
Ali, when I came to pitch a year and a half, almost 2 years ago in Pakistan, I went straight to the private sector first. And I pitched, and I sent out sponsorship proposals. I met a lot of very, very big corporate companies out in Pakistan who are extremely welcoming and very, very excited about the project. The difference is, unfortunately, Pakistan in the last 2 years has gone through a lot of, economical changes. It's been up and down. I believe that if there wasn't such a big change last summer, for example, when we had a big fall in the dollar against the rupee, etc., and the companies weren't taking back their budgets, I believe that we would have been able to get corporates to put their money where their mouth is. There was a lot of promises, and I'm not saying that they haven't promised in many ways, but when it comes to financial support, because this is not a charity, this is a self-funded project, it's an initiative that we started, we're not making money out of it. It's to advocate, more girls and schools to now join, to have proper PE facilities, but also to have a proper sport and a subject which is just as important as maths and English. In order to do that, we need both the private and the government sector involved. It cannot be done by one. And I have to say, they both have been very supportive. When it comes to getting financial help, if there isn't any, that's fine. We will still carry on advocating. But what the private sector then needs to do is to perhaps start their own projects where they create mini tournaments or something to do with their brand, like a marathon across Karachi or something, female marathon, women's only marathon, running around the beach side, etc. And these private sectors have the budget, they have the capacity and the resources to set up things like this. And this is where, we had a hashtag for Fem Games, which is Ab Beti Bhi Khelegi, right? Maybe they can use a hashtag similar like that, because, I'm happy for people to come on board and share their ideas from the private sector, and I'll be more than happy to share Fem Games, curriculum with them to make sure that we are providing that facility and that platform so that you have the same opportunity as their brothers did, for example, But I think it's really important the private sector does step up a little bit, rather than just sticking pictures of very famous people, on billboards. That's just gonna we are proud of that. We are proud of our stars, but how is that going to get schools to bring the sport? I mean, is your daughter going to say, hey, there was a picture up there and I want to be on that picture? Families are all going to be supportive of that. I think we need to, like you said, take baby steps. Let's talk about, you need to be very physically active. Let's do the bare minimum first. Let's do 2 hours of activity, which is really important. Let's advocate for more PE lessons in a week, first of all. There's one PE lesson, a week, and that's not enough. So let's do things like that. I think the private sector needs to really push for grassroots level stuff, then rather than just celebrating heroes out there. I think and there's not a dig out there. It's great that they're doing that, because it's time that we celebrate our heroes, especially female heroes. But I think that they should also simultaneously work with schools.
No, but I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, everything that you've said. I mean, no one could disagree with that. But just talking about Pakistan's heroic athletes, I think maybe perhaps if someone like a Wasim Akram or Waqar Yunus, if they spoke and actually made a point. I'm just giving you 2 examples here. Made a point to go out there and talk about encouraging women to play sport. I just feel like with our mindset, right, people would listen to that. I think it might help if Pakistan's great athletes constantly speak about encouraging women to play sport. I don't think that would be such a bad idea, because I think people would listen.
I think that's a great idea. We seen that Wasim Bhai recently spoke to the Pakistan women's team on a webinar that they arranged for their team, which I think went down really well, and it was great. I would like to see these stars. I would like to see the likes of Wasim Bhai and other stars in schools. That's what a private sector or somebody that has that leeway to organize that for them to do that. I don't think any star in particular is going to get up and start visiting schools to advocate for them to put their engage more students in their PE lessons or to up the PE lesson. This is an advocacy which needs to come from the government and the private sector together. It won't work from one side. Our athletes, our heroes, are our tools. Right, so we can use them in those areas, and you're right. Our mindset is such: when a famous person tells us something, we will listen.
We listen.
Now,
but if you look across the border as well, and even other sports, like if you look at even basketball, there are a number of great basketball players who talk about the importance of women basketball, the WNBA. So I mean that's all done to encourage young female athletes. So I think. Yeah, that should also happen as well. We need to make a concerted effort to do that.
I'll just give you a quick example. When my daughters play, they play county level cricket here, and my youngest is my son, who's 4, and he's playing golf. Now, everybody raises an eyebrow and say, "Betiyon ko cricketer bana rahe hain, isko golf mein khila rahe hain." It's those kind of things. And it doesn't matter how much Azhar puts on social media about his daughters playing. It's when he entered those schools and ran those STEM game sessions is when those kids and those girls actually engaged, and their parents who came and said, Azhar, this was amazing. This is great. Ab dobara kab aa rahe hain? And Azhar goes, mere aana ya na aana shouldn't be the issue. It should be that you have a great lesson that the girls are engaged in and they're enjoying it. The game-based skills and activities should be just as engaging and fun. Just take ball, pakra diya, unko bitha diya, and then expect them to throw it at each other. That's not fun. The other mindset is body shaming side of things, which I'm sure you will come to it later. But it's really important to stop. Our private sector needs to take that onus and that responsibility of where our culture, the mindset that we have of कि बेटी काली हो जाएगी, इसके रिश्ते नहीं आएंगे, so she can't play in the sun. So I've seen lots of girls who sit under the shade during PE, and I was like, okay, but there are ways, of handling this conversation. It's a very difficult conversation.
That was earlier, Ebba, that was the mindset I was talking about earlier. Ye kali ho jayegi, she shouldn't be out in the sun.
It's still there. In remote areas, if you go in, it's still there.
No, absolutely, it's a shame, and but it's great to see that someone like you is so passionate about this. We need more people like that. Your husband Azhar Mahmood, by the way, I had the privilege of meeting him. He's a great, very interesting guy. We took our coronavirus test together, by the way, when the PSL ended, and I was scared, and he was really encouraging me. So I think he has a huge role to play in encouraging people. He's wonderful. Noorena, I'm going to give you the last word. Talk about both you and Ebba actually touched upon the progress that we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years. Where do you see Pakistan going as far as female sports is concerned in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you want us to be?
Of course, I want everyone to be at the top, not only myself. I want to see football girls actually doing so well, getting the Olympic medal. I want to see my karate girls, my friends, because they're all my friends doing so well. I want to see tennis players actually getting to the Grand Slam anywhere. My squash friends, they're doing so well. I want to see them doing so well at the Worlds and everything. So the way Ebba actually mentioned that we have to take baby steps and stuff, and I want to just add to what she said, how financial problems and progress and everything can actually give a boost. I, as in someone who have been a student, and right now, how well can I speak and stuff, most of my athletes friends, they cannot, just because their education is being suffered. Their parents actually decide one thing, that either you study or you actually play. And I believe that these are human rights, and we are not supposed to be given options to either go for education or for sports. So schools, there are very few schools, and I study in one school which gave me scholarship. And I remember my mother was a single parent. She's a single parent, and she told me that ya to khelna hai, ya to padhna hai. And I remember in O levels, one of the school, I would name them, they're doing such a they played such a big role in my life. That is Roots Millennium School. They gave me scholarship, and even in A levels, and then after, right now I'm in undergrad, I'm actually studying for free completely. Now my other friends who are doing so well in squash, they cannot have this kind of education. This is where the system is wrong. Bringing Wasim Akram is fine, listening to him is fine, but at the same time my mother will say, "Acha ek dafa unhone bol diya, paise laenge wo." That's the problem. I have friends, they don't have actually money for their racket. I never had money for racket. I had to actually earn it. So this is the kind of system that we need, where if someone is so good with sports, they should be encouraged to actually get education for free. And what happens in Pakistan most of the time, or anywhere around the world, even in India, after our sports careers, we don't have jobs. Why? Just because we don't have the education facilities and stuff and the qualification. That is what is alarming. So if we bring that system within our schools, right from Deer till Karachi, and actually encourage these girls to actually get into sports, this will be encouragement for them, because they will be happy. For their parents, it will be encouragement for them, just because there will be no fee, and they will be actually studying quality education at such a good school, just because they're playing sport. That is such a big thing. So I believe once this kind of system is introduced, the way Ebba is doing, or someone else in the private sector actually introduced